I'm W.T. Edmondson, and welcome to Focus. Freedom often causes unbelievable silence. Well, we are talking about very serious issues. And one of those serious issues, predatory lending. We're going to talk a little bit more about predatory lending, and those of you that don't know what that is, you will before this program is over. Our guest is the Reverend Cassandra Gould. She's the pastor of Quinn Chapel AME Church here in Jefferson City, and she's also the executive director for Missouri Faith Voices. Missouri is the bellwether state for payday, title, and similar lending. The average percentage rate is 445%, with a maximum rate of 1,950%. Focus last focused on payday lending back in February 2012, where we had Brenda Proctor with the University of Missouri, who had a wealth of knowledge regarding her research on predatory lending. My editorial is that the payday and the car title loan industry prey upon the poor and the working poor within our state with the approval and the sanction of Missouri lawmakers. Many of these local establishments are headquarters outside the state, and their operation generates millions of dollars, and those profits leave the state of Missouri. A few states have been successful in legislating lending caps. In June 2016, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau proposed new rules to curb predatory payday and car title loans practices. Our guest is no stranger to Focus. Dr. Gould has been with us a number of times. And of course, I enjoy her being here because she has a wealth of knowledge, and not only a wealth of knowledge, but she is passionate about what she does. Also, she has a very supportive congregation there at Quinn Chapel, because many times, as involved as she is within the fight for the poor and the struggling, many congregations would feel that they are being robbed of their pastor because she's so involved in the community. So I would like to personally thank Quinn Chapel for your willingness to allow your pastor to do those prophetic things that the Lord has called her to do, and has called Quinn Chapel to be a part of. Reverend Gould, welcome again to Focus.
Thank you, W.T.
Before we get into the topic of predatory lending, tell us a little bit about what led to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau getting involved.
Yeah, I would say, so that agency was initiated back in 2009. I think it's kind of the brainchild of Senator Elizabeth Warren, and their role is actually to regulate financial organizations. Many people listening may remember, like in the last couple of years, there were all these regulations around credit card and late fees and all of these other things that was actually to help consumers. That was something that was led by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that we call the CFPB. So I think that it has been on their radar since their inception. I want to say the director's background is like in this governmental finance for the state of Ohio. And so they've been watching what I would call these bad actors for a really long time. As they have done their research and they started to do trends and to see trends and to get communication and complaints from citizens, they have like a kind of a complaint portal that you can make complaint anytime any kind of financial organization has failed you, whether you think you've been treated unfairly or interest rates are outrageous or anything that just doesn't seem quite right. And so it was with all of that wealth of knowledge and with them examining states like Missouri, who, as you said, policymakers have failed us. My background is finance, and I can remember when we had a cap. It was a 28% interest rate cap. You mentioned the last time you talked about this was in 2012. You are aware that Missouri Faith Voices and other entities across the state joined together to try and regulate this predatory lending by putting a cap at 36%. So our churches were gathering signatures and et cetera. The industry spent more money than we did. They stole petitions from us, and at the end of the day, we have no legislation, and lawmakers kind of act as if it's okay. Right now in the state of Missouri, you could actually have a loan that was 1,900%, and that is mind-boggling. Our state leads, one of the leaders, we're not the primary leader, but one of the top 5 leaders in having these high interest rate loans. As you said, the average interest rate in Missouri on these small dollar loans is over 450%. Because of the work that we did back in 2012 to attempt to get regulation, and because of the ongoing work that grassroots organizations like Missouri Faith Voices, Jobs with Justice, others have been involved in to continue to have that conversation, the CFPB has certainly used their role and their authority to craft this legislation. It was not just that they released those rules in June, but as you know, they released them right here in Missouri. I was blessed to be on the panel with the director and with others from across the country. And that was really, in my opinion, kind of a gift to us because of the kind of work that we have done. CFPB actually visited one of our Faith Voices meetings down in Southwest Missouri in Springfield last October. And so we are certainly in support of the rules regulating this industry, because this industry is really a scourge on society.
What is the Center for Responsible Lending?
Center for Responsible Lending is it's not a government entity. It's a nonprofit organization that really pushes for responsible lending. They seem to hold those lenders, whether they be banks or small dollar lenders like payday industry or auto title loan industry, they try to hold them accountable, but they also provide a wealth of information and knowledge for consumers as well. They have a great resource if you go to their website for consumers to understand various kinds of lending. The average person, if finance isn't your background, and I'm not talking about uneducated people or undereducated people. You could be a plumber or a school teacher. You're not a financial professional, and so when you sit across the desk from somebody and you sign papers, you just trust that you need money, they're going to give it to you. Yes, you can read, you may have kind of glanced at it, but oftentimes you don't even understand what you're writing, what you're signing. The issue with predatory lending is that the average person who goes to a payday loan shop, and they're all up and down Missouri Boulevard, blinking lights, they have all these commercials, need cash, get cash quick. But what they don't tell you is the pain that cash is going to cause you. They don't tell you that literally you could get a $500 loan and before you know it, not have a house because of the damage that this $500 does to you. They don't tell you that when you write them that post-dated check with every good intention of paying them back, but the loan is very unaffordable. And so very few people, a very low percentage, like under 20%, actually pay that loan off when it's actually due. So you got to get another one sometimes to pay that one off, or you're just paying interest. And before you know it, you've spent thousands of dollars on a loan that was just a few $100s. They don't tell you when you give them that post-dated check that they can actually debit your account 10, 15 times a day from that one post-dated check. And so now, if the average overdraft fee is about $30, and in most cases a little higher than that, but let's say it's $30 and it was debited 10 times, now you have a $300 hold. You still didn't pay the loan off. And so it's a cycle, it's a debt cycle. And so what these rules have been designed to do, they don't have the authority to regulate interest. We are going to have to insist that legislators are responsible enough and care enough about the average citizen that they actually adopt legislation that regulates interest. But what they can do is try to regulate the practices of some of these guys to make sure that there's some underwriting. Right now, if you're breathing and you have access to a checking account and you say you have income, you can get a loan.
Some of the collaborators that was working along with the CFPB was the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, the National Baptist Convention USA, the Catholic Charities USA, National Association of Evangelicals, the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, the Ecumenical Poverty Initiative, PICO, and the Center for Public Justice. So that's a tremendous.
It's a broad. It is broad. We are those entities that you just named, and I say we because Missouri Faith Voices is a federation of PICO, a national social justice that is a faith-based social justice organization, and so many of those leaders on there, organizations on there, are faith-based, and so we actually comprise a group called Faith for Just Lending. I was blessed to be kind of a part of the inaugural meeting of the group in D.C., and we lobbied on the Hill and had a press conference on Capitol Hill last year, I think it was, or a year before last now. And so what we have done in bringing together all these voices, and when you read those are groups that are not necessarily always in the same space. We often have very different theological ideas, different political views, but we've come together to say that no matter what else is different about us, we all believe that robbing the poor because they are poor is against the gospel. It is wrong. It is just a moral imperative. And so we've come together to say that payday lending is wrong. Payday lending is harmful. Payday lending has very bad effects on those, not just the people who borrow the money, but also on their families and the communities around them. That industry operates out of this kind of shame and blame kind of a thing, and so it is the unsuspecting single parent or unsuspecting poor working family that gets this loan to fix their transmission, like one of our borrowers down in Springfield, Jennifer, and now you're shamed into isolation. You don't tell anybody that you have the loan. You were trying to be self-sufficient instead of maybe going to your church or to a family member, and it starts to snowball, and you don't know how to get out of the loan. And so really we need to put the shame back on where it belongs, which is on the industry.
Some of the areas that is being addressed is require an ability to repay.
Yes.
Close the business as usual, require objective measures, prevent flipping short-term loans, limited refinancing unless the borrower has repaid 75% of the existing loan. So looking at the various things that the CFPB is addressing, let's go down the line. Tell us a little bit about this area, the ability to repay.
And so that's really one of the biggest things, those groups that you named. We've been convening in D.C. In fact, I was not able to be there, but we did have clergy leaders that were there 2 weeks ago when we were in the Medicaid trial in D.C. meeting with the CFPB. I've been in personal one-on-one meetings with the CFPB to try to get an understanding, but also to really push them to strengthen the rules. I do want to personally really applaud them in their work and their effort. This is historical. Since this industry has come into existence, we've not had any federal regulation around how they operate, which is why they've really, gotten out of control. I know that there are some that would say from a political standpoint, we don't need the government to tell, businesses how to operate. But when businesses are doing harm to large groups of people, I think that government regulation is helpful. Currently, as I mentioned, there are no underwriting abilities. If you decide to go buy a new car, if you go up to Jefferson Bank, you got to prove something to them. You have to prove some level of credit worthiness, that you have enough income to make the payment. With a predatory loan, you don't have to prove anything. You just come and you literally give them access to all of the money that you'll earn in the future because you give them that voided check. And so oftentimes what I hear from borrowers is by the time your check hits, they've already garnished your account in essence so many times. Again, you have overdraft fees and etc. that they've taken money but still not necessarily gotten paid, and so these people are just continue to run short. What we're asking collectively, people across the country are asking, yes, CFPB, you're in the right direction. Right now, their rule says that you could have up to 6 loans without underwriting, and we're saying that 6 is way too many. If there has to be an exception, it should be no more than 1. And you have to, so maybe you just had this one-time emergency, you needed this money, but on the second loan, if there's to be an exception, for my part, there should be no exception, but on the second loan, there should be ability to pay.
What is this about? They says here, one loophole has been closed, 5% payment to income loophole. What does that mean?
And that's a real technical thing. That's really more about the lender and them kind of being able to collect this 5% of their income from the fees and etc. That's not as much geared toward the consumer. The other thing that would concern us is you mentioned flipping and the refinancing of loans, is making sure. So what happens, there's a trend that the average borrower has like 7 to 9 of these loans at one time. And often it's not because these borrowers are trying to get something for nothing. It is because they can't afford the exorbitant interest that is ongoing, and they're trying to stop these debits from their bank account. And so I go over here to Quick Cash and get a loan. I'm not able to pay it, so then I find the next lender, and I go get another one from them. I pay off that loan, but then I still have this one, and sometimes I pay off this one, with the next loan. And so putting a limit to the number of loans that people have at one time, and so that people are not, or I come in and pay off my loan, but I really possibly borrowed that money. I didn't have all of the interest that you charged me, and I'm only paying it off so that you'll leave me alone, but I still need the money, so I flip it over basically into a new loan. And so those are the kinds of things that we are really concerned about, and asking the CFP to go a little further and to really close some of those gaps to make it harder for these predatory lenders to give people all of these loans. To say, we're also asking for a longer cooling off period, that it takes more than 30 days after you've paid off a loan before you're eligible for another one. Because what happens when you're desperate, you have a family to feed, you got hospital bills and etc. And you have legitimate needs. You're trying to figure out, how do I buy my kids shoes, and how do I fix the car? And so a desperate person doesn't usually read the fine print anyway. It'll say 455%. Now, in your right mind, you're like, I'm not signing that. But a desperate person says, I don't do this. If my car doesn't get fixed, I don't go to work.
Yeah.
And if I don't go to work, it's just a snowball effect. And so we recognize, there's a responsibility on the lenders, but they're desperate. And so the industry, first of all, why in America should we have a loan that's 455%? That's just not right. That certainly is immoral. It is legalized mafia tactics. legalized loan sharking is what it is. And so.
Now, when you talk about business as usual, the loopholes, business as usual, what falls in there?
What we're saying is, so if 6 loans are the exception, that means that the lenders can just continue even once the rule is actually accepted. So right now we're in this comment period, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. If the rule goes into effect, they can just do business as usual because they'll just take everything you have out of those first 6 loans. In fact, they may not even give you a 7th loan because they don't want to adhere to the rules and actually do any underwriting. So they'll put this 6 loan limit on you, which really doesn't help the consumer. It just means that they got everything that they could get from you out of those 6 loans, and they're not really affected by the rules. So it's really to prevent the lenders from finding the loophole.
Now, you spoke of the CFPB will allow 6 short-term loans across all lenders and 90-day total for indebtedness over a 12-month period. What does this do?
And so they're saying, the CFPB is saying that limits, because remember the average person had 7 to 9.
Right.
They're saying that limits the number of loans that you could have at one time to kind of the 6, but the problem is the 6 doesn't have underwriting. And we're saying that that's still too many, and that still allows the lender to operate in a very egregious manner that does not help consumers in general.
So the comment period that you indicated you would be speaking on, that comment period gives an opportunity for individuals to indicate to the CFPB, we understand that something is better than nothing, but this still doesn't hit the mark.
Absolutely. And I will be, for everyone that's on our mailing list, Faith Voices for Jeff City or Faith Voices for Columbia mailing list, I'll be sending out kind of a guideline this weekend that talks about how to make comments about that for people who may not have all of that knowledge. If you're not on our mailing list, I invite you to send an email to info@MissouriFaithVoices.org, info@MissouriFaithVoices.org, and become a part of our mailing list. But we are asking, comment period is open until October 7th. We are physically collecting comments, as well as you can go on a website. You can go to stopthedebttrap.org and do a comment card there. But we're also physically collecting those. You can pick those up. I'm going to make those cards available to local churches. There will certainly be some on Quinn Chapel on Sunday after church at the next Faith Voices meeting. I know you all had some at this past one, but there will be more at the September meeting as well. In those comments, you can tell your story of if you've ever had a payday loan, and just the effects of it, how you felt about it, how much money you actually ended up having to pay back. You can talk about being a faith leader as a pastor, if you've ever had to bail someone out of those loans. And if you don't have any of those kinds of stories, maybe it wasn't you or a family member, you can say that you really oppose living in a community, in a city, in a state, in a country that allows lending to be so open-ended and have this outrageous interest rates, and that entraps people. And you can encourage the CFPB to close those loopholes and not make so many exceptions. And that's something just the average layperson should be able to understand, that no one should be able to get 6 loans without any underwriting, particularly 6 loans that are at almost 500%.
Let's talk about enforcement. It says both the CFPB and state attorney generals and state regulators have the authority to enforce the provision. This shared enforcement authority is provided in the Dodd-Frank Act. anti-evasion clause. A lender must not take any action with the intent of evading the requirement of the rule.
Right, and so the Dodd-Frank Act is what created the CFPB. And so in that act, and I would say I'm more subject matter expert on what the rule does in predatory lending than I am on that act. But I am aware that in that act, it says wherever there are some regulations that are actually imposed and passed by the CFPB, they got to go on Capitol Hill and deal with those people up there to have this actually accepted. But wherever these rules go into effect, that any lender that is guilty of trying to find some other loophole or evading the regulation can actually be prosecuted by the Attorney General, that they can be shut down by the Attorney General, that the CFPB has the authority to impose, now I'm making an assumption, fines or some other actual ramifications on them for not actually being in line with the regulation.
Now, one of the things here, it says here, state usury limits are more protective of consumers than the rules provision. It speaks to the
Some
30.
states.
Yeah. It says numerous states with 36% APR with usury limits. Now this 36% came about as a result of military people getting hooked into these payday loans, and the federal government acted and said you're going to put a cap on at 36%, right?
Two different things. States, before legislators start putting money over people across the country, most states had a usury law. We had one at 28%, and then our legislators were pretty much bought because we don't have ceilings on, campaign finance or those kinds of things. And so they were bought and they got rid of usury laws. And so there are no usury laws. And so you have a state like Missouri that a payday lender comes in and can charge 500% or whatever they want to charge, and they do. There are still some states that actually their legislators acted out of compassion, and they actually put people over politics, and they have caps. And so some states have 36%, a few states have interest rates that are lower than that, and so payday lenders don't usually operate there because it's not that profitable to give a loan to somebody for those interest rates. On the flip side of that, what you mentioned is, I think it was in 2005, 2006, the Military Lending Act, which said that the federal government said military families can't get any loan that's more than 36%. That was a federal loan. We're really hoping that if we can't get states to get their acts together, that we could get two people in the federal government, two senators, someone from both sides of the aisle, two representatives, to actually put together a bill that says if it's good enough for military families, it's good enough for all of the families. This says that no one should have a loan that's more than 36%. Then we wouldn't even need these rules.
Yeah. Dr. Gould, thank you for coming and sharing information on these predatory lenders that operate within our state. Again, give us the information where they can contact.
Certainly. This Sunday, particularly at Quinn Chapel, we'll have some comment cards there. I will be sending some to other pastors, and if you would like comment cards and you may not be in contact with me, if you can send an email to info@MissouriFaithVoices.org. info at MissouriFaithVoices.org. We will get comment cards to you. They are due October the 7th.
Okay, alrighty. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming and sharing. Look, it is very important that we do what we can to look out for the poor, the working poor, those that are least fortunate than we. Somewhere it says something about the least of these. I think you can find that in the Word. We'll see you next time. God bless.
All right.